welcome to another episode of the Silver Track Extra, where we give you the tools, tips, and tricks to improve your guard management, retain more customers, and gain the upper hand against your competitors. Here are your hosts, Chris Anderson and Johnny Page.
What's up, Silver Track Nation? Johnny Page and the legendary Chris Anderson here on episode number 87, where we're going to talk about 10 areas you should never micromanage as a security company. Chris, I think this is going to be a fun topic just because there's so much that goes on under the roof of one fully functioning security company, whether you've got 50 guards or 5,000. And there comes a time as an owner or as a founder that you're not the one-man band anymore, and you start delegating, and you've got to trust the people around you. And I think it's super easy, whether you're in the security industry or not, or any industry in business, it's easy to want to micromanage certain areas, especially when we feel like we have more expertise in that area. So Chris, as you were growing your company and you started to, I know we've had conversations off the air where you were involved in all of the marketing decisions, in all of the hiring decisions, in all of the billing, and in all of the patrols. You're out in the field, you're the supervisor, you're wearing tons of hats, but eventually there came a time where you had to start passing some of that off. What was that like for you, and how did you start drawing the line of what you should be managing on a day-to-day basis and what was better to outsource or to have another employee handle?
Yeah, well, this is a great topic, and when we say micromanage, a lot of the guys, it's out of fear, a reason why we don't micromanage. We know what we need to do. I wasn't a business professional. I didn't go to school for 4 years and get a degree in business like I should have. I got into business and went to school, of course. But
the school of hard knocks, right?
The school of hard knocks, yeah. So my biggest thing is I was micromanaging out of fear, right? I didn't know, who to trust. This industry is very difficult to even bring guards in and run an efficient business, right? Where you get the guards managed. Now you're thinking, well, I've got to bring an accounting person in. I got to bring a human resources person. Well, that doesn't happen until you start growing your business. So you're the only one that's going to do it and run it, right? Until you get the money to hire quality people, And then when you get to that stage, it's hard to release it because then out of fear that, maybe the accounting person's going to rip you off or a family member is going to give you a great deal and you're not familiar, with, what a good system is. So a lot of it's out of fear. So when we talk about micromanage today, I think everybody really needs to understand is that we're talking about is when you're kind of in place and you found a person that you're working with and you're comfortable with them. You don't want to always be in their face trying to control them. Let them do their job if they're meeting the needs.
Yeah, I think it's super important to know what your lane is or where your strengths really lie. And that's a big part of really developing as a leader is understanding what things you're better off leaving to someone else and what things are right in your wheelhouse. Because it's a mindset you can develop as a founder, as you're growing your company. At the end of the day, you develop this mindset that it all comes back to you, right? And so it's really hard to want to let go of something when all is said and done, it all falls back on your shoulders. But in order to get to a point where you've got a solid team and an operation that could ever operate when you go on vacation or out for the weekend or even try to have dinner with your wife, you've got to start having people around you that have different strengths than you do. So we're going to go through 10 areas. We've just laid a simple foundation. This is just going to be a small checklist. This will be different for every operation. Some areas it's easier to, instead of maybe saying micromanage, maybe we should have said just being more hands-on, Chris, but there's definitely a line that should be drawn.
Yeah, John. We don't want to be. What we're saying, you don't want to be stupid. Like it's all you. Send me the reports. You want to obviously understand. You want to bring people in. What I did is I brought people in. I said, listen, do me a favor when you have some extra time. Come in and give me the the 1-2. All right. I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job, but I need to know where you're at and what you're doing, so I have a general idea. Okay. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So that's more, I think, what we're talking about here.
No, here's a great process for that. So the first on the list is accounting and human resources. We can really lump both of these in together. Here's a fantastic conversation to have and one to come back to on a regular basis. When you're hiring someone on, let's say for accounting, so before it was all mom pop type stuff, you're just making ends meet and doing it on your own. and eventually it comes time to outsource to someone because you need it to be a little bit more professional and tightened up. So let's sit down with the accountant and say, Mr. Johnson, I'm super excited to have you involved in the operation. I'm looking forward to what you can contribute. How can I, as an owner, and how can you, as the accountant, know that you're doing a good job? What are the things that we're going to pay attention to? So, for example, does it mean that the books are all resolved, or everything is kept up to date on a month-to-month basis? Or is it okay to come back and do that on a quarterly basis? Or what type of metrics and reports do you want as an owner so that you can keep a pulse on what's happening? So defining how can we tell that they're doing a good job? Same thing with human resources. And then even this is a huge pet peeve of mine. Number 3 on the list is marketing. So a lot of times we get into the weeds on the marketing because things look good and they feel good. But if it's not really driving results, then we're doing a whole lot of work for nothing. So as an owner, to be able to sit down and know, hey, I'm not the expert in marketing. I'm clearly going out to someone else to bring on a set of skills and expertise that I don't have. But we need to have some common ground in terms of the metrics that we're going to pay attention to know if we're having a good job. That's something that we practice here at Silvertrack.
John, I got a great story for this, if you don't mind me sharing on the marketing side real quick.
Yeah.
I had my 85-year-old grandfather work for me. He had a marketing background in the days, right? USC graduate, the whole bit. And he tells me, hey, I got this great idea for your patrol vehicles that I want to put together. And I said, okay, great, grandfather, but can you give me an idea? He goes, no, I kind of want to go behind the locked door here, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. And I said, well, can you take me in stages so we can kind of keep up to date? Because things have kind of changed, since your time period, He says, oh, no, he says, just trust me on this. So 2 or 3 days go by, and he ends up spending about, I got to tell you, I think it was like $3,000 or $4,000 at the time. And what he did this, he took these Batman cars, right, put it on a brochure and said, this is our Phantom fleet, right? And then he opens the door and thinking everybody's going to love this. And he comes out with this big, beautiful brochure. And we only had like 3 or 4 patrol cars at the time, but he made like 50 of them, like Batman, right? And said, this is our Phantom fleet, right? And I go, you got to be kidding me, right? We spent $3,000 for that. So there's a little side note for marketing for you.
Yeah, I think any area where we can, as an owner, if you can start to develop kind of like in your car, how there's certain things, like the check engine light will pop on and there's like a little code, they take it to the shop and it reads out a little code like, hey, something's wrong in this part of the car. Or when you go to check the oil, how you run the stick down the tube, pull it out, making sure there's enough oil in there. If as an owner you can implement little tests like that to where you're not going to be the tire, or it's just for the sake of the metaphor, you're not going to be the person maintaining things in that part of the operation, but you always need to be able to go and check the tire pressure, right? Yep. How do I know is this tire performing? So small tests that are built in that they know that's what their expectations are, and that's what the expectations are for them. Yep. And so that you know how to come back and check it.
Sure. Here's another one, too. I made it real simple for my accounting team. I didn't want a 15-page P&L, right? So all I needed just some basic numbers, right? What do we got sitting in the account? What's coming up in payroll, right? Very simple line items that they could have on my desk. It would take seconds, just a few seconds to print out. So I had an update in the morning, right? Weekly or bi-weekly, so I knew, right? And then when the major meetings came, and when we had everybody in the room for a couple hours, then we could all sit down and I could get a major overview. So I always knew. Made me feel comfortable,
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Silvertrack Nation, let's take a break and hear from our sponsors over at Paperless Proposal. Paperless Proposal software was developed to make creating professional business proposals a quick, easy, and enjoyable experience. With Paperless Proposal, you and your team will never again have to go through the frustrating and time-consuming process of creating your business proposals using outdated and time-consuming tools like Microsoft Word or PowerPoint. With Paperless Proposal, you and your team will look forward to creating business proposals. Visit paperlessproposal.com/Silvertrack to take advantage of a special offer just for our listeners. Now, let's get back to our featured conversation.
So items 4, 5, and 6 on our list of 10. So the first three: accounting, human resources, marketing. Items 4, 5, and 6, we've got anything that falls under the category of busy work. So for example, we can sometimes just our picky selves, as maybe a little bit control freaks, as founders or owners of the company, we can maybe see a report that comes across, or maybe a memo that goes out that's done slightly different than maybe we would normally do it. And we'll make small changes that have actually no influence on the outcome of the task. And we're having them go back and do edits or do it your way, when really it doesn't matter if it's done your way or someone else's way. As long as the job gets done, that's what we really care about. So anything that falls under that category, we don't want to micromanage. We don't want to get caught in the weeds on that issue. Same thing with IT. This is one I don't think 99% of us would never even attempt, because the way the infrastructure and your IT infrastructure in your company, making sure everyone has the laptops, computers, phones, printers, copiers, scanners, fax machines, etc. that work. None of us want to attempt that. If you don't have like a managed IT services, that's probably something eventually I recommend anyone
but you got to
bring in.
That one you have to be careful with, because you could go broke on that one. That one you almost have to micromanage. You have to know what you want, what you're looking at, and what they're willing to put in, because these guys will come in, use a lot of fancy terms, right? And before you know it, you've pinched a pretty good penny out of your pocket. So
yeah, well,
this one here, you need to really understand,
And Chris and I are not suggesting to be an idiot, right? Or that you don't need to be informed. As a business owner, you need to be informed on anything, on any decision being made, on any money that's going out. You need to know enough about it. Now, you don't go to the mechanic, someone that you trust, someone that you have experience with, and when he tells you need a new engine, you don't argue that, nope, I think it's actually the transmission, right? Because he's a mechanic. So first, you got to find someone that you're going to trust. Same thing with IT or any of these categories. It's better if they know more than you. And if they know more than you, then in their particular field, they definitely have the opportunity to pull one over on you. So trust is kind of a foundation for all these. You're not going to hand over accounting to anyone, human resources, marketing, any of the day-to-day operations, IT. You're not going to hand any of that stuff off if you don't trust the person, right?
Absolutely.
So number 6 here would be customer concerns. So this really falls under the category of your account managers, allowing the person who has the direct relationship with the customer to maintain that relationship. When I know sometimes, and Chris, I know you've heard this time and time again, it can when the stuff kind of hits the fan, the big bad owner wants to step in and fix everything. Right?
Yep, absolutely.
But the account manager has been the one that's been there day to day and understands. So if we step on their toes when things get bad and we don't let them work things out, what kind of foundation does that lay? Because you could maybe do that when you have 100 accounts, but do you ever want to have 200 accounts? Or do you want to have 300 accounts? We've got to equip our account managers to actually do a good job.
Yeah, and this is a tricky one too, because this is number 1 on my list, customer concerns, because I had a chalkboard right up front that gave a graph and showed a graph of where we were positioned. It's very simple, 1 to 10 on our accounts, whether they were happy or not. And number 2, my account managers, I didn't micromanage them because I knew exactly how they were. They knew exactly what to say and how to manage that account. I didn't want to step in, because when you step in, like you said, you're going to get some hurt feelings, right? They know this client better than you. You don't need to be, like you said, the Superman, come in and act like you saved the day, because you'll lose the faith of your account manager. So that one's hard right there.
And trust your account manager to bring you in when it's a good idea. Make that available. Say, hey, I know for sure, and I use it often, like, it is nice to have the back pocket tool, like, well, I need to get approval for that. Or even as an account manager, sometimes it's useful to say, you know what, I tried, but my hands are tied in this. This is just our policy. So, but when you're the owner, you come in, they know that you have the say over anything. So you lose a lot of negotiating power if it comes to that. If your always there on the ground as an owner. And that's probably
that's a good point there, Johnny. That's a real good point.
As the owner, they know you hold all the cards. As the account manager, I can say, sorry, my hands are tied. This is just the way the company does it. I'm here for you. So you can be on their side of the table. It's kind of, we can maybe dedicate a whole podcast to that one.
Yeah,
but
we should write that one down. Probably could.
So items number 7, 8, and 9, how about we shouldn't micromanage meetings. This is also a subject that we should talk about. Just sometimes it can be really easy for meetings to get out of hand. We have meetings for this, meetings for that, and it seems like there's a very fine line between a productive meeting and a meeting that we probably could have all done without, or was probably better suited for an email or maybe even just a memo. So certainly want to stay out of maybe
everybody
control.
loves to talk, right? Everybody loves to talk.
Yeah, right. Or then it becomes a time, when, let's say that, I know there were certain meetings like we had. So the company I used to work for, we had meetings every Tuesday. And if things are going well, like let's say all the account managers come to the table and, hey, Alan, you closed a deal. We got, another 168 over here. And, Stacy, you closed another deal too. And we have this huge contract in the pipeline. Super excited, right? Spirits are up. But let's say we lose an account, or we had something went wrong. A guard decided to take a leak on a customer's property. And now we're talking about some of the negatives. It had this no matter what happened, there was a tone that was set for everyone. The meetings were always at 9:00, and that you left the meeting with the overall feeling that everyone had. You know what I mean? You kind of had, if it was a bad meeting, everyone kind of left everyone just wanted to go to their office, shut their door, and just not think about what was going on, or if things were sliding backwards, but if things were good. So you have this fine line between making sure that meetings are productive and they're actually contributing to our operation, right?
Right.
So how about anything that falls, number 8 here is anything that falls in the creative department, which may be on a day-to-day, unless we're doing things like sales or could be different promotions or different...
general ideas. Good.
Yeah.
Good idea box. No one puts notes in those boxes anyhow, but, it was going to be done for meetings, but bring an idea.
Yeah, just as an overall concept, or micromanaging anything on the creative side can be difficult, and a lot of times it's pretty fruitless. How about number 9, purchase decisions? So this one, just to be clear here, what we're talking about is being involved in every little purchase. That it just completely handcuffs everyone in their respective departments. For example, if marketing doesn't have a budget that they're allowed to move within, that they're allowed to make small spending decisions to get to the end result, if they're not able to do that, and every single purchase they make, they've got to justify and talk about why it makes sense to purchase this, piece of software, this tool, or to spend money in this direction, without having those high level metrics that they're just answering to, it just cripples productivity. And so any type of major purchasing decisions like vehicles and uniforms and the cell phones, things that cost us a lot of money, sure, let's be involved in those, but let's also create some room to move around and just have them answer to an overall budget rather than every single purchase decision.
Yeah, that's a good one to talk about, bring this up, because I know everybody's thinking in the car, heck, no, I'm not giving anybody a credit card. These, sales guys will take advantage. They'll take everybody out to lunch and dinner, So
yeah.
What I used to do is I'd get those prepaid cards, and there'd be so much on the card. And we would say, okay, how much do you think you need a month to do what you needed to do? So that was set on the budget. If they didn't use it all up, right, it stayed in the pot, right? But again, they had to justify, at the end of the month, everything that they were spending, and we'd question it. But it did keep my budget within the budget, so to speak. And so worst case scenario, nobody was going to, bankrupt us.
The only time that putting a credit card in someone's hand is a scary thing is if there's a lack of accountability. And then if that's the case, it's the credit card is just bad or is just bad fruit on a bad tree. It's just one area. If there's a lack of accountability, maybe they're going to abuse a credit card. Taking away the credit card doesn't solve anything because they're probably abusing their time. too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When you see a massage on the bank statement, it doesn't.
Yeah,
it's not buying paper, right?
Yeah. So maybe money is just a reflection of how they're. I believe the way you spend your money as a business or as an individual really highlights your priorities. So if there's poor accountability in the way they manage their budget, as a marketing director or as a sales executive, there probably is going to be poor accountability in areas outside of that as well. Yep. So the last one here would be tracking time. And we don't mean this in terms of time clock. We mean this in regards to how much time are you spending on certain projects or items. So this goes back to, let's set the high level expectation. What's the outcome I expect from you, accounting department, and from you, account managers, and from you, HR team? What is the outcome? And not worrying about, well, when do they do, what are they doing first thing on Monday morning, or how long do they spend on X project? Just making sure that they're delivering the outcome and that they have the responsibility for managing their time and for managing their schedule. I think that, it just kind of stepping back and making sure we have good tools to measure is kind of the big takeaway. If you leave one thing here, if you leave this episode with one thing, that would be it, Chris, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's tracking time. That's always been an issue for people. But I mean, when they come into work, they usually have their week set up, and they'll give you their weekly schedule. Once they've established their weekly schedule, you know what they're doing, whether Thursday's payroll or cutting checks, those kind of things. The owners are pretty familiar with that, and they leave the people alone.
Yeah, so here's a prime example. This used to just like drive me nuts. So. This is really easy for business development guys. Perfect example. Do you really care how much time they spend in the office versus in the field? Or does it really only matter how much money they bring in? How many accounts do they close? Right. So you could care less. So a smart business owner could care less whether you ever see them in the office as long as you're closing deals.
Yep.
But when you so as a salesperson, you take the risk. If you never come in the office, you better show up. You better put up some solid numbers, because then everything is called into question, right? If you miss the numbers. But if you're confident you're going to hit the numbers, and you've done it and you have a season pass, why, as a owner, why micromanage that person? Let them be the expert, right? And so that one used to just drive me insane. Why, as a salesperson, would I be expected on a daily basis to be in the office at 8 a.m.? That's really not what you care about.
You know what? That is such a great point, John. And let me tell you a quick story. And I know we got to burn this up, but here's a guy I know told me about a guy that the owner was just like, first one in the office and last one to leave. It, never really about the numbers, just the fact the guy was in his office, right?
Yeah.
So this guy would come in and he would be the first one in the office every morning. Okay, so everybody that came in would see him in the office. There's Johnny sitting in the chair. Wow, Johnny, you're here again, right? And this is what he'd do every day. And then at the end of the day, he would be there, and he'd be the last one to leave. But you know what he was doing during the day?
Sleeping?
Surfing.
So
he surfed 4 hours a day, dude.
Jeez.
But he just got in early, right? Set the tone. Everybody goes, oh, he's in the office working hard. He's here before me. And then he's the last one to leave. So everybody just assumed, even though in the middle of the day he was out surfing, but it was just that image. And so numbers.
And this, I know we're running a little longer on the episode here, but someone who always wants to point to an indirect metric, like let's say, well, look how much time I spend on this. Like, I'm sorry. Basically what they're saying is the results weren't there, but look how hard I tried. And I understand there's a time and a place for that. And we should take some consideration about how much time went in. If you missed the mark, not a problem once. Not a problem even if you miss the mark twice. But if you're consistently missing the mark, but always saying, well, look how hard I work, that just shows that you have an inability to look at what's happening and fix or to actually deliver the desired outcome, right? You can't take a constructive look at what am I doing on a day-to-day basis to get me closer to the goal. So someone who just wants to use the excuse, oh, well, at least I worked really hard. It's,
John, it's like this. You might be ADD, or you might have a bunch of Gensu really fantastic cutting knives and you never used them once.
Yeah. Here, and just the sales is the easiest thing to pick on. Let's say, a missed quota, right? You miss quota as a salesperson for the quarter, but you say, well, I made 400 phone calls. As a business owner, the only thing I'm thinking is, well, you really suck at cold calling. Because that doesn't make any difference to me. I didn't hire you to make 400 phone calls. I hired you to close more deals, to hit your quota. So at the end of the day, that's how we should manage. I feel like it's a productive way to say, what's the outcome I expect of you? It makes it easier on the person in the business or in the operation, makes it easier on the salesperson, easier on the accounting team, easier on your account managers, and it makes it easier on you as a business owner. So there's way more that we could go into this, but there is a very awesome resource that we just released actually about a week and a half ago. The first day that we released it, we had over 50 downloads on the ebook, just the first day that we released it, on a guide to evaluating security officer performance. I'm sorry, I butchered that. It is the guide to evaluating security officer performance. Talks all about what are the things that we should be measuring. That is for free over at silvertracksoftware.com/resources. There'll also be a download or a link to that in the show notes for this episode at silvertracksoftware.com/87. So, Chris, anything else to add before we wrap this one up?
No, buddy. I think we loaded this one up.
Dude, we did it, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Well, until next time, my name is Johnny Page.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
This was a Silver Track Extra, and we'll see you on episode number 88.